Now, what I would recommend is that you take the QR code from that paper that you have, scan it, so that you can see the PDF document of what we're about to go over, okay? All right. So, Sister Macy, if we could go to the Session 2 slide deck there. Awesome. All right, very good. Oh, they're good. They're happy and comfortable. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Oh, well, appreciate the invitation. Yeah, I'm here a lot. Thank you. Thanks for your support, though. That's what I meant. Yeah. Thank you for hosting. It's an honor. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So, does everyone have the QR code scanned in the PDF document of Bible Quiz University? Okay, so this is just a free download, and what we encourage people to do is to use this as the curriculum that you use in your local quiz program. And so it's 9 lessons, and so what we do is we break that into 9 weeks. That's kind of the build-up to January anyways, and so we use the build-up from October through January to teach Bible Quiz University so that by the time they show up in January, they have such a high Bible quizzing IQ that they're just not going to get any fouls at all at the tournament, amen? No, they're still going to get some fouls, but they're going to understand what they did right and wrong. So let's go through. We're going to go quickly. We're not going to get through the whole document because it's like 50 pages. However, my goal is to teach you how to teach it, all right? It's to mobilize you as a teacher of Bible Quiz University, all right? And so, let's go to the next slide here. All right, so we have 3 levels of lessons, and each one has 3 separate lessons. Let's go to the next one here. We're going to go definitely through the bronze ones today, but you will totally understand the others if we can get through these. All right, so let's go to the next slide. And the next one there. The first lesson that we teach in Bible Quiz University is the 6 methods of memorization. The first thing we need these kids and parents to know is how to memorize, because that does not come natural to everyone. Has anyone ever heard a quizzer say, "I'm just not good at memorizing. How could I be a Bible quizzer?" Well, it always hurts me a little inside when people say that, because memorization is just a skill that you develop, and most people who say they aren't good at memorizing just haven't learned one of the 6 methods that works for them, and that's what we teach at our local quiz program is what are the 6 ways to memorize. And if you find the right way and you have enough accountability and support, you're going to be successful at it. I believe that if a quizzer knows the ABCs, and if they know the words to their favorite song, and if they know how to spell their name, they can learn the entire quiz material, because it's not any different than those things. One of the world's leading researchers in memory science found that the storage capacity of the human brain, the amount that we can memorize if given enough time and focus, is greater than 1 petabyte worth of data. If you took all of the books in the Library of Congress, the largest library in America, and you multiplied all the words in those books by 2, that's how much memory the human brain has, according to the top memory science researchers in the world. Now, you don't have enough necessarily time and focus in the world to memorize all that, but I don't really like hearing that I can't do it, because when you look at that stack of 500 verse cards as an experienced division quizzer and you've never done it before, you might think to yourself, this is literally impossible. And that's going through your quizzers' minds when they're looking at that stack of verse cards. There's no way that I could possibly do this. But those that have actually done it realize that the more you memorize, the smaller that stack looks. And you have it compartmentalized in your brain in a way that it's not really that impossible. It's just learning one verse 160 times. How hard is it to learn one verse? If we work together, we could teach any 6-year-old that walks in this room, we could teach them John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. We could teach them that within 3 minutes. We could. You're simply doing that 160 times. It's really a matter of consistency than it is a matter of ability, right? And so what we're doing is the 5 methods of memorization. Now, the first method of memorization is probably the most common. It's the phrase 5 method. We'll get into that. There's also the hand motions, which is great for the tiny tots. There's the song method, which is great for both junior and beginner Bible quizzers, but they also have senior songs now. Lydia Lindsay has amazing songs for the seniors now. There's the writing and typing method, subtract a word method, which is great for the young ones, and then the memory palace. Let's go to the next slide here. So phrase 5 method is probably the most common form of Bible quizzing. Phrase 5 method is where you out loud with a partner or by yourself, you understand the verse first. You read the verse. When you read John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. You think to yourself, okay, this is talking about like before the world started, in the beginning, right? And in the beginning, there was, I'm imagining this like empty space in the void. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was there. And the Word was with God. Okay, God's there. And the Word was God. Wait a second. God is the Word. You're understanding the verse before you learn it. Every verse that they learn, they should understand. And then you divide it into chunks. Now, it just so happens that John 1:1 comes in 3 beautiful little chunks because of these wonderful things called commas, right? In the beginning was the Word, comma. That's the first chunk. And the Word was with God, comma. And the Word was God, period, right? Now, when it comes to memory science, the ability of the short-term memory in your hippocampus to chunk things is very dependent on age. All right, so if you have an 18-year-old, you could probably divide it into 3 chunks and use phrase 5 based on 3 chunks. If you had an 18-year-old, you could say, in the beginning was the Word, and you would have them repeat that 5 times. In the beginning was the Word, in the beginning was the Word, in the beginning was the Word, in the beginning was the Word. And then you would have them do the second phrase by itself. And the Word was with God, and the Word was with God, and the Word was with God, and the Word was with God. Then you have them combine chunk 1 and chunk 2. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. Then you have them chunk the final phrase by itself. And the Word was God. 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 And then you add 1, 2, and 3 together. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Use your voice inflection to divide up the chunks. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Divide it up because they chunked it in their brain that way, right? So use your voice inflection to delineate where you are in the 3 chunks. But if you're working with a young person, like a 6, 7, 8-year-old, their working memory does not have the ability to do a 6-word chunk. So if I'm teaching, for instance, my youngest Oliver, he's 4, it's a 2 or 3 word chunk at most. In the beginning, in the beginning, in the beginning, in the beginning. In the beginning was the Word. In the beginning was the Word. He does understand noun-verb combination, so you can generally do a 3-word chunk. Now, what does that mean? It means that John 1:1 turns into 3 chunks into 6 chunks. Does that mean it's going to take longer to teach a junior Bible quizzer than a senior? Yes. Yes, it does, right? But they can do it. And so you divide it, then you repeat it. Let's go to the next method. That's phrase 5 method, all right? Hand motions is what I do for our tiny tots. And does anyone have a sign team at the church? Does anyone have anyone that knows sign language at the church? All right? I'm sorry to everyone that is fluent in American Sign Language, but hand motions are just totally made up, all right? Just totally made up, all right? We just kind of make random crazy stuff up, but you know what? The little kids remember it, and it works. and he will do them while we're doing them. And, you know, in the book of Acts last year, we had to get real creative because some of the verses were pretty long at the very beginning, but we ended up figuring it out. So hand motions is you just make dramatic hand motions for each chunk. Let's go to the next one. The song method, you still have to understand the verse first, but we use the songs at our house. Now, if you have your phone, you could go on your phone. You can find the Word Song app in the Apple Store or in the Google Play Store, and you download the Word Song app to your phone. This is Denise Richardson. She's an amazing, amazing veteran of the quiz ministry, and she makes a unique melody for all 270 of the junior Bible quizzing verses. There's a special place in heaven for Denise Richardson, all right? She's such a talented musician that she makes a separate melody for every single verse, and they repeat it style. It's incredible. And my oldest, when he was 4, he learned the entire beginner quiz material off of Word Song as a 4-year-old. We just played in the song. We played in the car. Every time you're in the car, you play one of the songs. And you know what? They learn it because it's a song, right? That's junior quizzing. And bqsongs.com is not a mobile app. It's a website, right? But if you go to BQ Songs, that is Sister Lindsay, and she's amazing, and she also does a unique melody for all of them. There's also senior Bible quizzing songs now. And there's some kids that just speaks their language, and sign them up for BQ Songs. This is a great way to learn the verses. Let's go to the next slide. The writing and typing method is what my wife did as a Bible quizzer. Now, I've been in quizzing for 22 years. My wife's been in quizzing for 26 years. She started in 1998 when she was 9 years old, and she really did well with this. You get a dry erase board in their room. Teens love this. Or you could get a pencil and paper or a computer with a laptop, and they type out the chunks instead of say them. And some kids, once again, this speaks their language. It works for them. And so you write out as much as you can. Then you look at the verse and see if it was right. And if it was wrong, you erase it. You do it again. You have to write it 5 times correctly, and then you add the next chunk 5 times correctly. And it probably takes a little longer than saying it, but once again, some people, it's just they have that visual. They need to see it. They need to do it, and then it helps it stick better. So the writing and typing method. Let's go to the next one. And then subtract a word provides the greatest level of support. This is great for young kids. I do this with my 4-year-old. You say something like, the same was in the beginning with God. That's John 1:2. The same was in the beginning with God. It's a short verse. And if they hear me say it enough times, then I'll subtract the last word. The same was in the beginning with, he'll say, God. Because our brain understands just pattern recognition and sound recognition. So if you say, the same is in the beginning with God, he'll definitely be able to fill in the last verse. Then I'll say the same was in the beginning, and then he'll say with God, and then he'll learn the last 2 words of the verse. The same was he'll say beginning with God. He'll learn the last 3 verses. And so they're basically learning the verse backwards from the end to the beginning. That's the subtract a word method. It's a great way when you're quoting someone to figure out how much do they have mastered. All right, let's go to the next one. And then the memory palace. Has anyone actually done a memory palace before? It's an incredible thing. So the top memory champions in the United States, did you know there's a memory championship in the United States every year where they have to go, and it's a big competition. It's a big national competition. You have to memorize large volumes of information, number sets, random facts. And all the top memory athletes in the United States use the memory palace. There's books written on this. You can check it out. But the memory palace, an amazing thing. You divide the verse into objects, okay? In the beginning. So what you do is you pick a place that you're familiar with, like your house, okay? And you walk through that in your mind, and you create a story that reminds you of where you are in the verse. So in the beginning would be the beginning of your home, which is the front door. Imagine there's a B on your front door for beginning, right? So you're walking through your house, you walk up to your front door, and there's a B on it. That reminds you of the word beginning. In the beginning. And then you open the door, and you see a Bible sitting there, the Word. In the beginning was the Word, right? And the Word was with God, okay? And then after you see that Bible, after you open the front door in your foyer, then you look up and there's this amazing, beautiful, brilliant light, and you see God right there, right? And so in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, because there's the Word, there's God. And then you look closer and you realize that the Word, that the words of the Bible are on that beautiful, brilliant light that is God. And the Word was God. And you have in your mind, now this one's more abstract and conceptual, but there are some verses that are very concrete noun-based, all right? And when they returned from Jerusalem from the Mount called Olivet, which was from Jerusalem about a Sabbath day's journey from Acts chapter 1. Some verses that have more concrete nouns. You can walk through a room, whether it's your school, a familiar park that you've been to. You create a memory palace for those verses. Now, memory palaces take the longest, but they actually have a long track record of being the most ingrained. You could do a memory palace of a verse this year, and 30 years from now, you'll be able to go back, find that in your mind, and walk through that memory palace. Because stories stick. We remember stories better than facts. It's creating a beautiful story in a familiar place in your mind using objects from the verse to remind you of the key phrases. Now, my recommendation is that you don't do memory palace for every verse because it would take forever. And you probably don't have 270 unique places in your life. However, it's great to do for a problem verse. It's great to do for a very long verse. Because it'll go from worst to first. It'll go from their worst verse to their best verse if they memory palace it. There's a detailed explanation on the PDF document of how to memory palace. It gives you an example from Acts chapter 1, verse 8. And this is something that you can teach your young people. We're giving them tools to be successful. It doesn't matter to me which of the 6 memorization methods work for them, as long as one of them works for them. Let's go to the next slide. We teach our young people in Heath that there are 4 levels of memorization. This helps them understand that if they are at one of these lower levels on their verses, that is not enough. Now, I'm not saying that we should disparage any level. If a young person learns one verse, to me, I'm glad they signed up for Bible quizzing that year, because that's one more verse that they knew before the year ended. But if you have a young person who's motivated and wants to be successful, we need to not stop at a level 2 memorization, which is partial memorization, where they still need the beginning of the phrase in order to quote it. We need to march our way up to level 4 memorization so that when they show up at the tournament and they don't understand why are these other quizzers able to interrupt like they are, it's because the other quizzers have figured out the top of the pyramid. So what are the 4 levels of memorization? Level 1 memorization is rough memorization, where you only know 1 or 2 words from the verse. If I told you, the former treatise have I made, O Theophilus, of all that Jesus began both to do and teach, and you tried to teach that verse to your child, and you taught him the first day, and you never reviewed it again, you never went back to it, Acts 1:1. Then a week later, if you went up to them and you said, can you quote Acts 1:1 for me? They would probably remember the word Theophilus, because it's a funny word. And they probably remember that Jesus was somewhere in there. They remember 1 or 2 words from the verse. That's level 1 memorization. And if you just touch a verse once and you don't come back to it, that's all it is. So let's go to the next slide. So we're trying to code this information in their brain. And the way that I think of memorization is building a road. You are trying to build synapses in the white matter in their brain from their hippocampus, where memory is stored, to their frontal cortex, where they can access and apply that with executive reasoning. You're building neural connections with these verses. And what we want is great neural connections with a very fast pathway. But if all you get is level 1 memorization, let's go to the next slide, it's kind of like a road that's like this. You're driving in your car, and you get to this in the road. Now, I'm just telling you, you're not getting through this forest. And if they're at level 1 memorization, they simply don't have the neural synapses. There's no road there. I don't care how many times you ask them to quote Acts 1:1. They're not going to be able to quote it because there is no road there. There is no neuron that connects their hippocampus to their frontal cortex that is Acts 1:1. And so that's level 1 memorization. So a kid shows up to a tournament, and they ask them a question, they're not going to be able to answer it because there's no road there. Let's go now, level 2 memorization, which is yellow on the pyramid. If we go back to the pyramid, level 2 memorization is partial memorization, where they know about 90% of the verse. What you'll find with quizzers that are at level 2 memorization is you have to give them the beginning of the verse every time. And so if you said, quote Acts 1:1, they'd probably sit for a while and they'd think, and they'd think, and they'd think, and then you'd say and then they'd say, the former treatise have I made, O Theophilus, and then they'd stop at the second phrase, and you'd say, of all that Jesus began both to do and teach. Have you ever quoted a quizzer and that was what was happening? Where if you give them the beginning of any phrase, because once again, the subtract a word method and the way we chunk things, we as soon as we have the beginning of the chunk, we've got the whole thing. But they're really only at level 2 memorization. There's a big gap. They need to know what the beginning phrase is. And if you teach them a verse and you review it once or twice, so you teach them on Sunday the verse, you review it on Monday, you review it on Tuesday, then a month later, if you went back, they'd still know 90% of it. They would. And they'd be at level 2. Now, let's go to the second road, all right? That's what level 2 memorization looks like. There is a road there. There's just a lot missing. There's a lot of gaps. So they might be able to quote 90% of a verse, but that's not going to help them when it comes to quotation completion questions, locate this verse questions, and cross-reference quotes where they have to quote the whole thing. Am I right? All right. So we cannot stop at level 2 memorization. And the way that we get to the next one, let's go back to the pyramid. Level 3 memorization is where you can quote the entire verse perfectly. You can quote the whole verse, 100% of it. You don't need the beginning. You don't need the beginning phrases. But you have to pause at certain points to refresh your mind. You have to pause. Level 3 is where you can quote the whole thing, but you have to pause, right? And if you were to learn the verse on Sunday, then you review it Monday, you review it Tuesday, you review it Wednesday, you review it Thursday, it's going to be at level 3. It will. And you know what? They're probably going to have a lot of success. They're probably going to answer a lot of questions right. They're probably going to run out of time, though, on some of these quotations because they're stopping to think. Let's go to the next road, okay? That is what level 3 memorization looks like. Now, it's a beautiful road, and you will get from point A to point B, but it's going to take you longer to get there. It's a little bit of a curvy path. That neuron was almost perfect, but you still have to weed through a little bit in your mind to figure out, was it but as the next phrase or and as the next phrase? Wait, I can find it. It's just going to take me a while to get there. Let's go back to the pyramid. The goal of every Bible quizzer is to get to the top, which is level 4 memorization. That is where a quizzer can speed quote. They're automatic. Call it what you want. We call it level 4 memorization. A lot of people call it speed quoting. But I'll tell you what. There's a verse from Esther 4:11. I learned when I was like 18 years old. I'm not 18 anymore. That was 18 years ago, okay? And it's the longest verse I ever learned. I think it's like the 3rd longest verse in the Bible. But I spent so much time on Esther 4:11. And I tell you what, I hardly ever practice it, but I practice it so much that it got to here. I'm going to quote it for you, right? All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king to the inner court who is not called, there is one law of his to put him to death, except such to whom the king shall hold out the golden scepter that he may live. But I have not been called to come in unto the king these 30 days. That's the verse. It's like 70 words. All right? God bless any junior Bible quizzer that ever has to learn a verse that long. Now, you know what? It's kind of a fun party trick. But it actually takes 0 effort because I'm not even like thinking. Just like if I asked you what your phone number was, you just like tell me real fast. It's just a bunch of random numbers. If I asked you to quote your favorite movie quote your favorite song, it doesn't actually require a whole lot of effort because it's got. So let's go to the picture from level 4 memorization. This is what a road looks like in level 4 memorization, right? It's very straight. You could probably go 100 on that thing, right? Level 4 memorization is being able to speed quote. It's being able to speed quote your material. It's being able to 3 seconds a verse, just quote that thing so fast. That is what the best Bible quizzers in America do. It's because they don't stop quoting that verse on Thursday. They quote it again on Friday. They quote it again on Saturday. They quote it again on Sunday. They quote it again the next Monday. And if you continue to lay down asphalt, if you continue to wire those neurons, if you continue to come back again and again with that designated daily reviewer, and you don't stop day after day after day, all of your verses will get to here. And that is how you interrupt. And that is how you win nationals. That is how, because in order to interrupt, you have to know the verse with such fluency that you really are on autopilot. You're really not thinking that much. That's what Linnea Plappert did in her final year. Best quizzer in America from right here in Arkansas. Because she was actually on cruise control. She was on autopilot. All those verses were so ingrained that she just knew them. That's what Addison Oaks does. Best intermediate quizzer in America last year, right here from Arkansas. So we have to get our verses to level 4, which means you need that designated daily reviewer at home that is the bad cop sometimes that says, we're quoting today because that's what we do in this house. Because we're quoting today because we committed to this. And if you do that, that's going to be one of the biggest recipes for success. And we spend a lot of time in our church going over lesson 1 of Bible Quiz University, bronze level 1, how to memorize. Because if you set the tone to the parents and you say, this is the pathway for your kid to accomplish what they want to, you all can do what you want to, but I'm going to tell you what they need to do to succeed. They need to do this. Let's go to the next slide. So, these are the 4 levels of memorization. Level 1 means if you don't review at all, that's what your verses will be. If you review 1 or 2 days, they'll be level 2. If you review 3 to 6 consecutive days, they'll be level 3. If you review 7 days straight, they will go to level 4 on that. And they will speed quote that thing so fast. Your quoting sessions will be so quick at home. Because you have to quote every verse every day. In our house, you have to quote every verse every day. And if you do, we'll get there. Let's go to the next one. Okay? 80% of competitive success in Bible quizzing is simply getting the verses to level 4. 80%. 20% of success in Bible quizzing is all that other stuff, knowing how to interrupt, how to answer questions, reading a quiz master, watching their voice inflections, contesting like a champion. That's like 20% of success. The people that really do well at tournaments, the reason that there's always churches every year in a district who are constantly winning everything is simply because Monday through Saturday at home, somebody is the bad cop at home that says, we're quoting our verses today. That's it. 80% of success in Bible quizzing happens not in quiz practice, not at the tournament. It's at home. Once again, Bible quizzing is not soccer practice, where you drop off your kids for 2 hours and the coaches do all the work. Most of Bible quizzing happens at home. It's a family devotion. And if we get that through to the parents, that your kid's not signing up for Bible quizzing, your family is signing up for Bible quizzing. You're going to do this. Like Deuteronomy chapter 6. When you lie down, when you rise up, when you go through the way, when you're riding in the car, it's Bible quizzing. When you've got 5 minutes waiting in line at the store, it's Bible quizzing. That flip book goes in your purse everywhere you go. The songs are always playing. Before they go to bed, it's the last thing we go through our kids. So that while they're sleeping, their brain is laying down the road. And so I have had times with my 4-year-old where I'll tell them a verse one time as they're going to bed at night. And the next morning, he quotes it to me perfectly. Something about that while they're sleeping, their brain is writing. And we want the last thing that they do before they go to bed to be putting the Word of God in their heart. But if you can get that down, get the verses down, Interruption University is going to be a breeze. You're going to get there, okay? Let's go to the next slide. So, to achieve competitive success, you got to know the verses really good. Everything else comes from there. And that happens from daily review, and you need that designated daily reviewer is probably the most important missing link. What's the common theme between every great Bible quizzer? There's somebody at home that made them do it. Oh, I don't want to force them to do it. You know what? We force them to do lots of stuff. You know what every last year quizzer says when they stand up on this stage at Nationals? What did the last year quizzer say? Mom, thank you for making me do this for 13 years. Thank you for not giving me a choice because it was important and I didn't realize it at the time because I was only a kid, but you made me do the thing that was most important and I'm grateful. They will say thank you. So it's okay to make a child do something that they may not want to do right now. I don't want them to resent it or dread it. You know what? We're going to make this thing fun. We're going to have a blast, but life is about learning, and we're going to choose to learn the right things. All right? Let's go to the next slide. So how do you read a question? That's also part of Bronze Level 1. How do you read a question? It's important for your coaches to know how to read a question because a cornerstone of every quiz practice is reading quizzes. So let's go to the next one. How do you read a question? The first thing you say is the question number 1. And then you say the question type. Question number 1 is a 2-part question. It's important that your coaches are trained how to do this correctly because that's how the quizmaster of the tournament is going to do it. Question number 1 is a 2-part question. Then you say how many points it's worth. Now, don't mess this up, okay? Don't say this is a 10-point question, it's 2 parts, and it's question number 1. Don't do it like that. They need to have that consistent, okay? If you were coaching a basketball team and you had them shooting free throws, hundreds of free throws, you wouldn't have them shoot the free throws with a soccer ball or a tennis ball, right? You want them practicing like it'll happen at the game. And you want your quiz practices, you want your coaches, you're going to have to quality control this stuff. When I had to train 22 coaches in 3 months, I was in every single homeroom constantly. Hey, let's kind of reword that. Let's do it like this. I want you to listen to me do it first, and then I want you to repeat what I'm doing. Question number 1 is a 2-part question worth 10 points, and then you say the word question. That's how they know that the question's about to begin. Or you might say, question number 9 is a quotation question worth 20 points question. That's what the quizmaster will sound like. Every time a question gets read in your practice, it needs to be read like that, okay? Now, if it's a 1-part question, you won't say the question type. I don't know why. That's just how it is. So if it was a 1-part question, they would say, question number 1 is worth 10 points question. That's how it will be done in nationals, okay? Let's go to the next one. Bronze Lesson 2. So that was Bronze Lesson 1. That would be like 30 to 40 minutes worth of your quiz practice. You go through Bronze Lesson 1. Let's go to the next one. Those are the 4 divisions. We teach this in quizzing. That way our quizzers all know that we're talking about the same thing. Let's go to the next one. This is how the buzzers are laid out. And this is how it's probably good to demonstrate this to them. Teams consist of 2 to 5 quizzers and 1 to 2 coaches. All right? This is how it'll be laid out. So the quiz master will be here, like standing right about there, okay? The judges will be on the quiz master's left. The scorekeeper will be on the quiz master's right. And it goes red 1, red 2, red 3, yellow 1, yellow 2, yellow 3. And when you're laying out your buzzers in your quiz practice, make sure you do it this way every single time. So from the quizzer's perspective, looking out at the quiz master, the captain's always on their right. And so they need to know who red 1 is, that's the captain, red 2 and red 3. And they need to know who yellow 1 is, that's the captain of the yellow team, and yellow 2, yellow 3, because everything goes through the captain. The contests go through the captain. Only the captain's allowed to call timeouts. And so let's make sure that we're showing that. And then the coaches sit behind, and the substitute quizzers sit behind them on the stage. Let's go to the next one. There's the captains. There we go. Red 1 and yellow 1. Where should the quizzer be looking? At the quizmaster's mouth, right? They should learn to look at your mouth, not your shoes. Why do we look at the quizmaster's mouth? Because on a quotation completion, if they're about to form the next word with their lips, you can actually read their lips and see what word they're about to form, and it will give you an advantage when you're quizzing. So we teach our quizzers to look at the quizmaster's mouth. Let's go to the next slide. Now, here's I think, what makes Bible Quizzing University different than any other resource and what makes it the only graded Bible quizzing curriculum in the world, is that it has tests after every lesson. At school, do you just kind of like hand them a textbook and say, I hope you know this by the end of the year. I trust you. Did you read it? I'll give you credit if you say you read it. No, you have to take a quiz. You have to take a test. There's midterms and there's finals. And in our quiz program, they have to actually take a test after every lesson. That test gets graded. We can do it real time or on the spot. And if they don't pass the test, they didn't learn it. So we go back through and we teach it again. And so how many quizzers can be on a team? 1, 6, 1 to 3, or 2 to 5? 2 to 5, right? They have to shade in that box right there. Even our beginners, we make our beginners do it. Let's go to the next slide. All right. What are the 4 divisions of Bible quizzing? Beginner, junior, intermediate experience, preschool, elementary, junior high, senior high, beginner, junior, intermediate, senior. You ever seen that? Babies, kids, preteens, teens. Well, that's A. Okay? The experience division is not called senior. It's called experience division, right? And so the way that you implement Bible Quizzing University at your local quiz program is, what I'm recommending is that once a week, you go through one lesson, you make them take the test, you assess their mastery of the material, and then you move on. And so you have them take, and Macy, let's click through. We can jump past all these questions. Yeah, we can keep going through. I have every question on there. Also, these PowerPoints are going to be available on the website as well so that you can teach it like I'm teaching it right now. It has the answers. You could go right into the answers. If someone's this age, what division can they be in? All of that. All right. So that is how you do Bible. Now, there's no test after the memorization portion. After lesson 1, where they learn how to memorize, there's no test. But there is a challenge. They have to learn a verse using all 6 of the methods. And then they get to decide which method they like the best. And so they have to actually learn 6 verses as the end of bronze level 1. And it's kind of funny with the 18-year-olds doing the hand motions and stuff. They don't ever pick that one. But the basics of Bible quizzing, what time is it? How far are we going till? Okay, so we're kind of up against it, aren't we? We're about to jump to the next session. But I think we got started a little late, so let's keep going a little bit on Bible Quiz University. Once again, we're not going to get through every lesson, but I'm going to just show you how to use it and then use the PDF document on the QR code to teach it. Let's go to the next slide. The basics of quizzing. Now, let's go to the next one. In seniors, there are 8 10-point questions. In juniors, there are 6. There are 9 20-point questions. In juniors, there are 6. And in both of them, there are 3 30-point questions, which means the 30s have a tremendous weight in junior Bible quizzing. The 30s almost completely wipe out everything that happened in the 10s. So that probably could be adjusted. But anyways, that's how it works. So that's how many questions there are in each. Let's go to the next slide. If they get a question wrong, they lose half the point value of whatever it was worth. Okay. And we already went over that. Let's keep going. Okay. If it's questions interrupted, so if you buzz in before the quizmaster's done talking, you have to finish what they would have said, complete the interruption, and you have to answer it. And that's an interruption. But it's a blessing and a curse. There's a pro and a con. The reason that teams interrupt is because they're the first one that gets a chance to answer it. But if you get the interruption wrong, that question gets reread to the other team like a free throw in basketball. They get to hear the whole question, and then they get to buzz in on it and answer it. And so if you interrupt too much or too early, and we teach in Interruption University what too early means, then you're actually you're assuming more risk, right? Because you might give them more rereads. Let's go to the next slide. During a reread, your quizzers should wait 1 to 2 seconds after the quizmaster is done talking before they buzz in. Let's not interrupt rereads. If you interrupt while the quizmaster is giving you a reread, you get a foul and the question's closed. So not only do you get negative points, you also don't get to take the free throw and get the free question. So it's a best practice for your quizzers not to be competing against each other to race for a reread. I blame that on coaching whenever I see that. Now, every now and then it's just that kids don't listen. I've had 1 or 2 of those. We've coached probably about 200 kids over the years, and we've seen thousands of kids go through this ministry. Sometimes kids don't listen. Okay, I get it. But if I see this on a consistent basis, that comes down to coaching. Your quizzers should be trained in practice that if they have a reread and they buzz in right after it, we automatically call them wrong. Or we do it over again. We repeat it again and again until you see their little heads bob. They'll hear the reread. Question number 1 will be reread to the red team without interruption according to Acts chapter 1, verse 1. The former what? Our quizzers will go 1, 2. And then they'll hit. Because they have to wait 2 seconds after the reread so they don't interrupt it. All right? Let's go to the next slide. Quizzers should have both arms on the table. Not one arm on the table. That's a foul. Both arms on the table, buzzer in their hand. Okay? Next slide. Eligibility in tournaments. Is Sister Hamby in here? I'm going to keep going until she tells me to stop, okay? Because I think we're not going to break one split session until all the split sessions break, so we're going to go as far as we can. BQ University. Silver level lessons raise the level of difficulty a little bit, okay? So this is the intermediate level difficulty stuff that's in the rule manual. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. So if a church only has one quizzer, they can combine with another church. If you have two quizzers at your church and another church has two quizzers, sorry, you can't make a 4-person team because you both have enough to be a standalone ministry. But if you have one solo quizzer in a given division, if they have no one else in their division to quiz with, they can join with another team. The maximum amount of teams that can join is 2 churches. They can form a single team. You can't have 3 churches joining together, one quizzer each. That's not allowed. Let's go to the next slide. A quizzer can go between, like an 8-year-old, for instance, an 8-year-old would be a beginner quizzer. They can quiz up into juniors if you want them to, right? But you cannot go from junior to intermediate. You can't have like an 11-year-old quiz in intermediate. There's like a barrier there. We good? 2 minutes? Okay. So juniors cannot go to intermediate for whatever reason. But once you're an intermediate, you can quiz. If you're a 12-year-old, you could quiz intermediate or experienced, right? Now, an 11-year-old cannot go down to junior or beginners. So follow the chart that's at the beginning, and you can see what ages are allowed for which division, okay? Let's go to the next one. Now, on the age stuff, if you have, let's say, if you have a 12-year-old and they want to quiz experience to quiz with their older sibling because it's like their older sibling's last year or something, if they quiz experienced once, they can totally go back down to intermediate the next year. It's not like they burned up their intermediate eligibility just because they quiz experience once. It's just if you qualify based on your age, you get to quiz in that division, okay? Let's go to the next one. Junior quizzes take 10 to 15 minutes. Senior quizzes take 20 to 25 minutes, so when you're looking at a matrix, that's how much time to allot for that quiz to happen. Let's go to the next slide. This is how you read a tournament. Let's go to the next slide. It'll look like this on a matrix. You have quiz 1, quiz 2, quiz 3, quiz 4. That's what the Q stands for. And you have these 2 teams. We have the Heath, this is my church, Heath NZ, and then we have them, instead of being Heath NZ1 and Heath NZ2 and Heath NZ3, we had them pick their favorite food. So these are the Heath NZ cookies and the Heath NZ brownies, okay? And so Heath is playing Defiance in game 1, all right? So Heath and Defiance are game 1. Now, this is something that not everyone realizes. Whoever's the top person on the pairing is on the red buzzers. Whoever's the bottom person on the pairing is on the yellow buzzers. So if you were from Defiance, Ohio, and you looked at this matrix the very first time, you'd say, oh, we're quizzing quiz 1, we're the first ones up, and we're on the yellow. You're going to finish the entire column, like this one, the brownies got a bye, all right? So the brownies got a bye, they automatically move forward, and then Cincinnati and Groveport quizzed in quiz 3. So let's say you're here and you're Columbus Stark, and you're the 5th quiz. If you had a parent call you at the beginning of the tournament and ask, how early till we're up? The tournament starts at 10 o'clock. Well, how much time does it take for a junior quiz? 10 to 15 minutes. How many quizzes until Columbus Stark plays? 1, skip that one because that's a bye. 2, 3, they're the 4th game. So there's 3 quizzes before us. How long does it take to finish 3 quizzes? Worst case scenario, 30 minutes. So they need to be there by 10:30. Don't tell them we have an hour. They need to be there by 10:30 because then they're going to be called. If you're not there when you're called, you lose the 10 bonus points that you start the game with. If you're not there 15 minutes after you're called, you forfeit the game in juniors. You get 30 minutes grace in seniors. All right? So they finish that column, then that column, then that column. Let's go to the next slide. Now, if you lose in round 1, it's a double elimination tournament. Unless you're doing a round robin, which you might do a round robin, which everybody plays everybody. But if it's a double elimination, then they go to the round 2 bracket. We do not call this the loser's bracket. Big pet peeve of mine. Big pet peeve. We don't call round 2 bracket the loser's bracket because I've seen many teams win nationals from the round 2 bracket. Are you going to call them a loser? No. All right, you have to, once you lose your second game, that's when you're out of the tournament. So then they come down here, and that's quiz 12, 13. Now, the little number in parentheses is what place they finished in the tournament. So whoever loses game 16 will have finished tied for 7th, okay? And then whoever wins round 2 comes back through and quiz the winner of round 1. If the winner of round 2, who already has a loss, beats the team that won round one, who doesn't have a loss, then they play again, one second game in the final, because it's a double elimination tournament. So the team that won round one is still undefeated. So you got to beat them twice to be the champ. Okay? That's how you read a matrix. That's on upcquiz.com. That's where you'll find all these matrices. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. We just talked about that. Extravaganzas are optional, but we encourage people to take advantage of them. These are regional tournaments. The top few teams actually automatically qualify for nationals. Let's go to the next one. Okay. Junior Bible Quiz Extravaganzas. So this is based on how many teams are at the extravaganza and how many teams qualify for nationals because of it. This is the only chart in the world that actually has all this on one place. All right. And the same thing, in your district finals, this tells you how many teams are at the Arkansas district finals is how many teams you get to send to nationals and so on. So if you want to know how many teams get to go to nationals at this tournament, just look at this blue chart in BQ University, Silver Lesson 1, and you'll know exactly how many teams qualify based on who is there. Okay? Let's go to the next slide. All right. So the idea here is that you become the administrator and teacher of this in your local program. Then you quiz them, and they pass the test, and your quizzers walk into January with an incredible Bible quizzing IQ. They understand this at a very high level. In the past, we used to hand people a rule manual and say, read this by January, and nobody would read it, and then they would basically have to learn by osmosis all this stuff after quizzing a few years, and then hopefully by year 3 or 4, they spoke the language. There's basically a 3 or 4 year learning curve in Bible quizzing where you're not even competitive the first few years. I'm hoping we can fast track that and change things. And so that's what these tools are used for. All right, are we ready? Okay, so we're splitting off to our next session. In this room, we're going to go over 101 things to do in a Bible quizzing practice. And then the juniors are going to go through some tools for the juniors in the room across the hall. The seniors are going to go over some tools for the teenagers down that hall. Okay, so are we good to go? We got everyone where they're supposed to be? 2 minutes? Okay, you're going to tell them to come in? Okay, quick bathroom break, all right? And